Boom, hey internets. Wanted to drop this video about retail. There's been a lot of conversation. I had a couple questions about retail, pros and cons, or both sides of it. So before I do other in-depth question about opening up your own flagship, I wanted to talk about the general pros and cons. So this is a good beginner conversation. So let me start with this. If you go back in my channel, I was very bullish on opening up retail. Generally speaking, in the past, not a fan of opening up retail. And since the rise of e-commerce and selling online and watching the growth of that and knowing retail has shifted to not becoming the only factor in selling product, I haven't said a lot about retail. It's very much more traditional and standard. So a lot of the questions that get asked here on this channel are more about e-commerce and how to move more online. And if I'm being honest, the way things used to work with trade shows and selling to buyers, where there could be a lot of gatekeepers in the industry, I think it's actually positive that a brand can work somewhat remotely, like not be in Los Angeles and New York, and can be very prosperous, do multi-millions, and not show up to one trade show, sell direct to customer. But there is something to be said about the market of selling to a shop. I've mentioned Tilly's before, I've mentioned Active. Those are both American retail chains that have huge distribution power. They cut big checks, they have a good fanfare, a lot of foot traffic and people that purchase the product. So they're wonderful outlets, great partners of distributorship for your product. Having said that, if you wanted to go the Johnny Cupcakes route and you wanted to open up your own flagship, meaning a shop that primarily sells only your product, there's a couple pros and cons to it. Let me start with the cons, which is generally why I don't like retail. Number one, location, 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 as in with any retail venture. To get a place that has really good foot traffic, it's gonna cost you a lot of money. There's a lot of upfront investment when it comes to retail. You're gonna have to buy all the racks, you're gonna have to renovate the space, you're gonna have to have all your product in and ready on hangers with hang tags and pricing, so it's easier for the customer. You wanna have a good customer experience. Of course, part of having a good retail, which draws a lot of people, is they get to curate their own space. They get to decorate, they get to set the vibe for that shopper. Now that looks good in a Visa small business commercial, but it's gonna cost a lot of money. And with any real estate renovation, you wanna think double or triple whatever the suggested price might be to do all of that. So by the time you get to the end of that finish line of that race, that's only the beginning of the launch and opening day, which you need much more energy for. So you would have been through a journey before the week that you say, hey, we're having a grand opening for the shop. So big upfront investment. Location is gonna cost you a lot of money. And on that point, if you go to a lesser location, but it's a cheaper lease, you're going to have to build your clientele so that they can be loyal to travel off the beaten path to get to your retail. Besides investment, there's a continuing liability, which I don't like. So if someone's mad at you personally, or maybe mad at one of your employees, or maybe someone is just in a drunken stupor, they could take a chair or a rock and throw it at your window, and you're gonna have to replace that window. We're going into things such as insurance. It's a physical place that you're leasing, so you will have liability, and I'm sure, of course, your landlord is gonna have liability, but either way, there's a way for a stranger to create a lot of chaos or more bills for you possibly. I'll also note with ongoing liability, of course, there's theft. Most theft is internal, so it tends to be someone who works at the place, or maybe an old employee who is running the register that will be involved in theft. So that's also a possibility. And along with that theme of ongoing upkeep, I would say the third thing is you have to keep it hot or trending. So there's added pressure in your marketing to keep people coming in. You have to have promotions and reasons for people to come in, like art shows or in any kind of way to work with the community to bring people in, and that can be a lot of additional work. Okay, let's talk about the good things. Let's talk about the pros, which with social media have been kind of elevated to another level. But number one, you can do exclusive product drops that are not online. So more and more as things are getting more online, people are interested in things that are offline. And so you can kind of make that dance. So you'll be able to say, if you come to the location this week, we have product that no one else can buy, or you can have that product available first to people in person and then drop it online. Number two, I mentioned community. You can meet a fan base or community, depends on how you look at it, but part of building a brand no matter what. If you're only gonna do e-commerce, you still need to build a community, and that will be online. So whether you're doing it traditional or just e-commerce, you always have to build a community. But I would argue you can make deeper connections with people when it's in person. So community is always gonna be a big factor, and this can accelerate that into fandom. So I'm gonna kind of separate that into a third point. You can argue it's the same, but building the fandom is creating your community, and that can include doing special events at your place since you're already paying for the lease. So I would do panels, like I mentioned, art shows, anything to bring people in. Maybe bringing in barbers, hair, nails, some sort of beauty aspect that's already tied into fashion. Have some sort of contest, or be a place for some sort of after party or pre-party, that sort of thing, where you can use the space for multiple things just to get feet inside the door and get them acquainted with your retail space. A fourth point, even though in the beginning of the cons I was saying you have to renovate, the good thing about this, especially if you're more creative or artistic, is you get to set the vibe. So I'm gonna turn it into a positive as well. But you can change a presentation wall, or maybe keep something consistent that becomes iconic. So you use it as a tool for social media. Everyone wants to take a picture by a wall or a statue or some sort of element in your store. On the other hand, if you want to change it out monthly, you can do that as well. So artistically, it can be a place of expression, which then you can use also in marketing. And the last thing I'll say for a pro point is, if you've built it successfully, because you have a place where people know they can congregate to see new product, new drops, and new collaborations. If you collaborate with any other groups to make some sort of product that you could sell at the shop, since they know to come there, you could also liquidate things very easily. If you have product from 2 seasons ago that really just didn't move, you can have a sale rack, and typically, if you know any retail, you would kind of move the sales rack in the middle or maybe at the end, any kind of clearance rack, so they have to go through the entire store to go through newer items or more expensive items, anything with a bigger margin up front, so they have to see that on the way there. But you just have opportunity to sell to people in the hours that you're open during the week, which you can kind of just take and physically put there instead of creating a whole nother campaign online with promo codes and all of that. So guys, what's your experience with retail? Do you have tips? Did you own retail before? Are you not a fan? Drop it all down below. You got more questions on this, you can get me at this number here, email me, or you can just drop a comment. I read them all, use them for my new videos. Please drop a like on this. It helps me tremendously. You already know that. I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.